So backing up a bit, again, welcome to BIOL&241, Human Anatomy and Physiology 1. So everything that you will need for this course is on Canvas. You'll have access to all of the slide decks that I use for any of our lectures, including this one, and you will be receiving the links to watch the recorded versions of these Zoom lectures. So also on Canvas, you should be able to find our syllabus and the course schedule, which I have a slide talking about here, and then any other supplemental readings, links to helpful info, and all of your assignments. So this course will meet on Zoom with the link that you guys used to get here today, every Tuesday and Thursday at 2 p.m. until 3:20. And then we will meet in person on Mondays and Wednesdays in the Science and Math building of the Seattle Central campus. So if you haven't been on campus before, there is the main Broadway Edison building where a majority of all the student resources and a lot of the classrooms are. And then there is a separate, smaller building just north of the Broadway Edison building called SAM, or Science and Math building. And our labs will be meeting in room 306. So that is the third floor. If you take the stairs or come out of the elevator, just turn left and follow that hallway and you'll find it. And so Monday and Wednesday at 2 p.m. until 3:50. So we get a little bit longer for lab, and those will be in person. Additionally, every Wednesday, I will be holding regular office hours, either in person in my office, so where I currently am, so in the same SAM building on the 4th floor, room 414, or you can join via Zoom. So it's a separate link from our class Zoom. It has its own office hours Zoom link, so you can use that to join virtually or come see me in person. Those will be every Wednesday at 9:30 to 11:30 a.m. So if you're around in the morning and want to come stop by, but really anytime if you come by my office and you see the light on, feel free to knock and come in to talk about whatever or ask questions about class. Contacting me, whoops, did not mean to edit this. Contacting me, I prefer that you message me through Canvas as much as possible. So on Canvas, if you go into the inbox, you can just click our course and then find my name. That way it keeps our whole conversation in one place. You are also welcome to email me, but it's much easier for me to lose track of like individual emails in my inbox since I have a lot of emails from all the other stuff going on and it doesn't always show the full conversation. So please use Canvas message as much as possible, but also feel free to email me directly. Okay. So starting off with a little bit about me, in lab tomorrow, we'll have you guys do a bit of an introduction to each other and get to put faces to names and learn a little bit. But about me, I grew up, born and raised, lived most of my life in Florida. I only moved out here to Seattle a couple of years ago. And so I went to school in Florida as well. I went to Florida State University, where I studied biology and psychology for my undergraduate degree. And then I got a master's in STEM teaching. And specifically, I focused my content and research on college STEM teaching and did a lot of review and analysis of like modern pedagogy, there's been a bit of a revolution in how science is taught the past 10 years or so, trying to move away from just like fact-based lab manuals with full instructions on everything, very cut and dry teaching, and moving more into exploratory, actually doing science type of teaching, thinking about concepts and having big discussions, etc. So although this course does involve a lot of terminology, a lot of very specific facts, I don't like teaching that way, and will find every single opportunity I can to try to talk about concepts and do like deeper creative thinking and creative problem solving whenever we do have the opportunity, because that's how we learn best anyways. But as an undergrad, I did research and was published for researching how our microbiome, which are all of the bacterial organisms that live in and on our body, so how our microbiome affects our psychology, specifically social behavior. That was a relatively new science at the time, and in the past 10 years or so has come a really long way. We actually know that there is a lot that our microbiome does to affect our psychology, to affect our behavior. And so really exciting stuff there. And then in grad school, I was published for developing a lesson where I was using the virus that causes COVID-19 as the model organism to teach about evolution and mutation and gene expression. So My reason for pointing those out is my background was in cellular and molecular biology, as well as evolution. Those are my areas of interest and areas of passion that I was following through most of my education. So I was not focused on human biology or anatomy and physiology. In fact, I didn't even take this course as a student. And I don't tell you that to make it seem like I'm going to do a bad job here, or to say like I don't know what I'm doing. I've taught this before, and I do at least somewhat know what I'm doing here. But I wanted to preface that so that you understand that I'm not an expert in this. I'm not a medical professional. I'm not an expert in all things human anatomy and physiology. And so that plays a big role in how I run the class and how I teach. I approach teaching and approach our class as a learning team. I am here to try to guide you through this content as best as possible since I've had more time with it and I understand what you are expected to take from this class to go to the next level. However, everyone's success in this classroom is going to rely heavily on your contributions as well. So there are some medical professionals or ex-medical professionals in this class. Any kind of input you guys have or extension and application that you can offer is going to be a great benefit to others. Even if you aren't a medical professional or don't have a background in this, sharing your point of view, your personal experience is going to be helpful for others as well. Right? As instructors, the only thing I can do is talk about this content in the way that it makes sense to me or the way that I think is going to be easiest to understand for you all, but that's not always going to apply since I only have my personal experience. And so I highly encourage, again, that you guys share as often as possible and ask questions as often as possible. We have a class full of 24 unique experiences and backgrounds. And so the more points of view that we can share, the more likely it is that someone in this room is going to get something useful out of it or build an understanding from it. So hopefully that makes sense. And so does anyone have any questions or concerns from that? And if at any point during class you do have a question or something you'd like to say, you are more than welcome to use the raise hand option in Zoom. And if I'm not seeing that or not getting to you, feel free to jump in whenever I take a pause. So that's a bit about me, I guess, outside of education and my professional career. I love being outdoors. Like I said, I was born and raised in Florida. My mom was a marine science extension educator, so all of her work is outdoors. My stepdad was a Boy Scout leader, so I was doing lots of camping, kayaking, exploring, but got really tired of the heat in Florida, got really scared by the political environment in Florida, and so got the heck out of there and came over to Washington. And I love that Washington is so diverse in the life and topography and geography here. We have all 7 natural biomes present in just one state. And so I've been having the time of my life going out and getting to experience a rainforest one day and then the desert the next and the mountains and the ocean. So love being outdoors, but I also have a lot of fun indoors. I play a lot of video games. I've always been a gamer. And I think playing video games or having such a strong background in video games played a big role in building scientific knowledge and skills that have followed me throughout my whole life, right? Creative problem solving, accepting failure and learning from failure and knowing that I can just try again and use what I learned to do better the next time. So those types of things. Most recently, the game I've played most is Baldur's Gate 3. I think I checked the other day and I have like 240 hours in this game since I got it in September. So in the past 5 months, I've spent 10 full real-time days in this game. And then that's just a picture of my crazy dog and my wife, Heaven. Yeah. Anyway, shout out gamers. Video games do a lot, or a lot of what you use in video games is applicable to science as well. So we've talked about most of this stuff. Zoom lectures Tuesday and Thursday, in-person labs Monday and Wednesday in SAM 306. A camera and microphone are required for these Zoom classes. You don't need to be on camera for the entire time that we're going through lecture, but when you're in breakout rooms working on in-class assignments, I do expect you to be on camera and speaking with your group mates. So you can get webcams and microphones, I believe, from the Seattle Central Library if you need to borrow those through the quarter. Talked about office hours. I guess something of note here that we haven't discussed. The only times I will discuss your grades is when I know I'm talking to you. And so this excludes email and message communication. We can talk generally about grades over message, but I won't talk specifics about grades unless I can see you one-on-one. So either in person or on Zoom with your camera, so I know that I'm not sharing your protected info with someone who shouldn't have it. Okay. The objectives for this course. So every course comes with a set of course objectives. This is essentially stating to the college and to whatever course you're going to next, or to whatever job you're going to that's looking for the fact that you took Bio A and P. This is telling them what knowledge and what skills you should have taken from this course, essentially, right? So the goal is, through this course, you will be able to accomplish all these things. And so for any course that you are taking, I highly recommend you read your course objectives. It's a great way to get an insight into what that course is going to be about. And again, like I said, what you are expected to take from that course to the next level. So this course is a prereq for some very specific pathways. And so if you are going on to the next level, A&P2, or going into a nursing program, et cetera, they are expecting you to be capable of these things after passing this course. Okay, so materials for this course. So like I said, Canvas is going to have most of the things that you need: pre-recorded lectures, PowerPoints, all of your assignments, additional documents and whatnot. But things you will need to get for yourself is the Fundamentals of Anatomy and Physiology textbook. I don't like requiring a textbook. I don't like putting any financial obligation on my students, and try to remove that as much as possible. But just because of the rigor and intensity of this course, it is almost required, like highly, highly, highly recommend. It will be a struggle if you don't have this textbook. So please make sure you go grab a copy, even if it's an older edition, which is totally fine. Those are usually cheaper. And whether it's a physical hard copy or it's a virtual PDF, it doesn't matter, whatever works best for you. But please make sure you get a copy of the Fundamentals of Anatomy and Physiology textbook. And then I also highly recommend this Anatomy and Physiology coloring book. There are assignments that do require you to have this coloring book. However, all the assignments in this course are technically optional, with the exception of exams. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. But this coloring book is a really, really great resource, and really, really great for learning all this long list of terms and facts that we're going to be talking about in this class. And we'll come back to talk about that more in a second. So with that coloring book, you're also going to need some coloring pencils. In lab, we will be using Play-Doh and crepe paper to make models for some assignments. I have Play-Doh and crepe paper available for you in the lab. This is just on here if you would like your own, so that you can ensure no one else is touching that Play-Doh. And then lastly, regular access to a laptop or computer, reliable internet, whether that's at home or somewhere that you can access regularly, and then a webcam and microphone for these meetings, these Zoom meetings. So any questions, concerns so far? Go ahead, James.
Regarding the anatomy and physiology textbook, I have one that is on the way, but I don't see it showing up for maybe a week and some change. Is that going to be a problem? Should I try to get the ebook? Is there a bit of a grace period for the first week where we're kind of able to go without it? Or what's your 2 cents on that?
Yeah, great question. And I intended to talk about that. So thank you for asking, because that reminds me to talk about that. You should be fine without the textbook for these first couple of weeks. So this week we're going over chemistry, and next week we're going over cellular biology. And hopefully those two topics are review for all of you, since they were prereqs for this course. So you shouldn't necessarily need the textbook these first couple of weeks. The only thing that I guess is somewhat of a rush to get is the coloring book. However, I did think of that earlier today. So the first coloring book assignment, let me just pull up Canvas really quick. Module 1 and Module 2 are both due at the end of this week, but the first coloring book assignment that's in here for Module 2, I will likely extend another week to give that grace period for any of you that are ordering it and need to wait for it to come in. And if getting that book is taking even longer or there's other delays, just let me know, and I'll extend the due date for you as an individual even further. But this is going to move from January 7th to be due January 15th. And if you need a further extension, just let me know. But yeah, great question. And thank you again, James. Okay, any other questions or concerns so far? Yeah, go ahead.
Maybe one more. I'm sorry. With regard, I see any addition was mentioned before. Is there a lot of like chapter variations or anything with regards to like the book and what we're supposed to be reading or whatnot?
So with textbooks, most of what changes edition to edition are the figures and some of the like extra info, like they'll have like case studies and stuff like that that get updated with modern research. As far as the core information that we're going to be using in this class, it shouldn't vary very much. So yeah, unless if you want the prettiest images and the clearest images, get the most recent text. But as far as just following along with what's going on in the course, you should be fine with any addition. On that note, though, for the anatomy and physiology coloring book, the pages that I'm assigning are from the most recent edition. And I don't have a older previous edition to find the pages that align with it. But I do know that there are some pages that are present in the newest edition that aren't present in the older ones. So you are still welcome to get an older edition. You just may not be able to do certain pages, which just means you miss out on the opportunity for 3 points at a time. But there are lots and lots of pages that you have the option to do and submit. So it shouldn't be too big of an issue, but that is something to keep in mind. If you want to make sure you have the opportunity to do every coloring book page, you should try to get the newest edition. But thank you for both of those questions, James. Okay, so how this class is organized. We will be covering 3 different units with an exam at the end of each of them. So for units 1 and 2, we will have a separate lecture and lab exam for each of these. And then for unit 3, the lecture and lab exam is compiled into one because we're kind of just covering the same information, just with slightly different viewpoints, slightly different perspectives between lecture and lab. So that means at the end of unit 1, we will have a lecture exam. And then on a different day, we will have the skeleton lab exam. At the end of unit 2, we will have a lecture exam and then a separate muscle exam on a different day. But then at the end of unit 3, both of the exams will be together. It's just one exam. Right? Each unit has about 4 chapters in it, each separated into their own modules. And so you can see the topics that we'll be covering in lecture and lab for both of them. So this first unit is mostly review of general biology with our basic chemistry info that you also would have learned in general biology. And then we talk about the different types of tissues that are present in the body. And that's essentially setting us up to then go into more specifics about each of the major tissues for the next 2 units. In lab, we are going to mainly be focusing on the skeletons, or learning the bones and their orientations through these first few weeks. For unit 2, we'll be looking at muscles and joints. And then again, unit 3 is going to overlap with the lecture content, just kind of going deeper into the nervous system, spinal cord, and brain. And so that's generally how it's set up. I wish I could say we have 1 module per week, but we only have 11 weeks in this course, roughly, depending on how you consider finals week. But we have 12 chapters to go through. So we do get some overlap. For instance, modules 1 and 2 are both being covered this week, but yeah. All right. So the grades. So this course is set up using the points system. So the grading scheme here is a bit different than, or is definitely different than your typical course. So essentially your goal is to accumulate as many points as you can whenever you have the time to do it. There are more points available in the course than you need. So you do have some flexibility to miss some if you have a particularly busy week, or to focus your studying and time spent on this content with assignments that work best for you, because there's also a pretty wide variety of types of assignments available in this course to go with this. And so essentially, at the end of the quarter, if you have accumulated 1,000 points, you have earned a 4.0. However, there are around 1,300 points available throughout the entire quarter. So almost a third of the total points is extra available to you. So again, you have some wiggle room. You can pick and choose which assignments you want to do. My suggestion is that you complete any and everything early on, right? Do as much as possible. And I mean, continue that for as long as you have the time for it. If you have the time to do every single assignment, you're much better off doing every single assignment. However, as we start getting through the quarter and you find that like the purpose games do nothing for you, then just start ignoring those, or only do those when you have some extra time and you just want to make sure you get a few points, or you find the coloring book is tedious and takes too much time. Just start ignoring those and put those off to the last thing that you do, right? Because you won't need every single assignment. Okay. And so this is just one option for how your final grade will be calculated. In order to qualify for this point system, you must maintain an exam average of at least 50% and score at least 40% on each individual exam. Okay. So this does put a bit of weight on the exams, right? Because they determine whether or not you can use this system. But again, I'm just asking that you are getting at least half of the points on each of those exams on average in order to do that. And so, yeah, the exams are hard. The lab exam is extremely specific, right? You're going to get models in front of you and be asked to identify not just what bone, so specifically for the skeleton exam, you could be asked what bone that is. Is this a left or a right version of that bone? What is the bone marking that I'm pointing out? And or which bone does this bone articulate with, right? Which means which bone does it connect with or meet with? So the exams are decently difficult and quite specific. The quizzes are that way as well, but you have unlimited attempts at each of the quizzes. So that's meant to help point out some of the very specifics that you may have missed during lecture or not had noticed. But again, you get unlimited attempts on those quizzes. So do them as many times as you need to get the full points. And yeah. Sorry, I feel like I rambled a bit there. Can I clarify anything here? Does this make sense to everybody? Okay, so earn as many points as you can. You also, if this is too time consuming and tedious and you find that you're doing well on your own or only doing a few of the assignments at a time, you do have the option to have your final grade based off of your exam average. So totally possible that a student only earns a few hundred points and finds their own way of studying and building this knowledge to do well on the exams. And so if that's you, we could use your exam average, and that'll be based off of the college-wide grading scale. So a 4.0 is 95% above, a 1 is 65%, and everything in between. So you can either do the point system as long as you maintain an exam average above 50, or you can do the exam average system if you don't want to do as much of the busy work or extra assignments. Okay. Yes, Benjamin.
Does that just mean that we get to just choose at the end of the quarter which one we want, or how does that work?
Essentially, yeah. So by default, you're going to be graded on the point system. I'll only use your exam average for the grade if you ask for it. If I have the time to analyze and look and see like, Benjamin didn't earn very many points, but he has a really good exam average, I might reach out to you and say, hey, like, what would you prefer to do? But I can't guarantee I will have the time to do that analysis and take care of it myself. So if you want the exam average, yes, at the end of the quarter or towards the end of the quarter, let me know. Good question. Okay. So like I said, there are a variety of different types of assignments available throughout this course in order to earn points. So there are going to be at least one quiz per module, and these quizzes average to around 18 points each, with the total possible from all the quizzes being around 330 points. Each of our lab assignments, again, well, no, because we don't have one this week. I was going to say there should be one per week, but an average of one per week. Each lab assignment will be worth 20 points. So that's 10 points for doing the assignment, and then another 10 points for peer review on that assignment. You guys will be, well, I'll go into that more in lab, but there were 20 points total. So a total of 260 from that. Each exam, your performance on the lecture for the lecture exam for Unit 1 and the lab exam from Unit 1 will be averaged together out of 100 points for that exam. So there's one exam per unit, and so 300 points total. Sorry, one exam grade per unit, so 300 points total. We will have a few in-class assignments throughout the quarter. Reflections and other are just assignments that didn't fit into these other categories. They're about 10 points each. And then the assignments where there's going to be like most stuff to do or a bunch of individual things are going to be the games and puzzles and the coloring book pages. So at the end of this PowerPoint, I'm going to go back through Canvas and I can show you kind of what this looks like. But essentially, the games and puzzles for that module is going to have in it a few different options, a few different suggestions for what games and puzzles to do. You can just go and complete those games and puzzles, take a screenshot of your finished score, and then submit that onto Canvas. And those are worth 2 points for each individual game. So one assignment might have 4 games and puzzles in it. So that assignment is worth 8 points. Okay? So there's an average of around 100 points available for that. And then lastly, our coloring book pages. So each page of the coloring book is worth 3 points, and same deal with games and puzzles. So one assignment might have 4 or 5 pages in it. And so it could be worth 12 to 15 points. Right? And there's some that have a lot. I think there's the largest coloring book pages assignment has 27 points available in it. So anyways, for a total of 180 possible throughout the quarter. So altogether, there's about 1,300 points available. So you don't have to do every single thing. You only need 1,000 total at the end to get that 4.0. But again, I recommend doing everything at the beginning, figure out which stuff you like, which stuff you don't like, and then start to manage your time from there. Okay. So here's a quick look at our schedule for both lecture and lab. There's a document that is containing your syllabus with all the syllabus information we've been talking about, and there's a separate document with both of these schedules in it. So if you ever want to take a quick look at what we're going to be covering and when, this should hold generally accurately. This is tentative because things happen and things might move around. But generally, this is how the class should look. So in lecture, we're talking about chapters directly from the textbook. And then in lab, we'll be going over, like I said, mostly the skeleton for Unit 1, mostly the muscles for Unit 2, and then building on some of that nervous system information for Unit 3. On these schedules, I also have pointed out when the college is closed, and so we don't have class, like our Faculty Development Day on Thursday, February 8th. Our exams are going to be taken in lab whenever we have them. So our first exam is going to be the lecture exam 1 on January 24th in lab, and then you'll have the lab exam for Unit 1, the skeleton exam, that following Monday. So hopefully this is helpful for you. I recommend you download that and save it somewhere, put it somewhere where you're going to see it often, so you always have a heads up on what's going on. And when class is canceled, I guess the next one we have coming up is for Martin Luther King Jr. Day on Monday the 15th. Any questions or concerns on the last few slides we've discussed? All right. So best practices for success. So to give you the greatest opportunity to pass this course, these are my suggestions. Right. So before class, I highly recommend you review the learning objectives for each chapter. Just like how the course objectives are indicating what you are expected to take away from this course, the learning objectives are describing what I'm expecting you to take away from each module, or I guess to be more accurate, what I'm hoping to teach you in each module. And thus the exams are aligned with those learning objectives, or they are designed to assess if you have met those learning objectives. Right? So the way I try to design my courses as much as possible is I generate learning objectives first, and then design an assessment that aligns with those learning objectives. And then I try to design content that will help you build the skills and knowledge you need to then succeed on that assessment. Right? So those learning objectives are super important. And I think probably one of your best resources as far as a guide for studying. Also before class, read the textbook chapter. So we have, what is it? An hour and 20 minutes for a lecture twice a week. So we have 2 hours and 40 minutes each week with each other. But this is a 7 credit hour course, right? So 2 of those contact hours are being taken up with lab. But we should, for a 5 credit hour course, which is what the lecture portion is, we should have 5 hours together. And so if we had that, you may not need to read the textbook beforehand or do a lot of extra prep. But I don't have the time to dive deep into developing or giving an understanding of a lot of these concepts if I'm also teaching all of the individual specifics. If I were to teach the entire chapter every single lecture, we wouldn't get anywhere. We wouldn't have the time to get through all this stuff. So highly recommend you read the textbook chapter beforehand so that in class, I can just dive deeper into some of the more complex topics and concepts to help build a deeper understanding of that stuff. I also highly recommend you look at the assignments that are for that each module before we go into that content, so that you are at least somewhat aware of what's going to be asked of you. And that way you can bring questions to class rather than waiting until class is over, you're doing the assignment, and we don't get to talk about it again until the next week. Okay. During class, if possible, try to attend Zoom somewhere where there's going to be minimal distraction. I know that's not possible for everybody. Some people are going to have to join Zoom on campus, or you have a lot of family at home or wherever you are. But if possible, try to reduce the possible distractions around you as much as you can. Putting your phone on silent, putting it upside down somewhere, right? Try to take notes, or the best way to take notes. There's a plethora of research supporting this idea, but the best way to learn with note-taking is to physically write it with your hand. So using pen and pencil or using a stylus on a tablet. There's less research, I guess, for the tablet part, but it should translate the same. But that is the best way to take notes. That is what develops deeper neural connections, because you're including more sensations, more neural pathways, thus strengthening the connections of those pathways. While in lecture, try to focus your note-taking on larger concepts, practices, and tips. So more of what I'm saying or what other students are sharing, rather than trying to write down every single thing that's on the slide. Right? You guys have access to these slide decks. Whenever you need that information, whenever you need that bullet point, you can pull up this PowerPoint at any point that you want. You can pull these slides at any point. And so if you're spending your time during class trying to furiously write down all the information that's on the slide, you're likely not listening to what's being talked about and might miss out on the information that was more impactful for you. So while in class, take notes on some of the extra stuff, things that someone said that help make something click for you, rather than ignoring what's being said to write down everything that's on the slide. Whenever you have questions, please ask them. And then any opportunity you have to offer your input or share your experience, please do that as well. All right. Then after class, so I've mentioned briefly so far, this class is very intensive. It's very rigorous. AMP1 and AMP2 are probably the most difficult biology courses offered at this college, just because of how much content there is. Not necessarily that understanding the human body is extremely difficult, but because of what is being asked of you in this 11-week period, it's just a lot of stuff. It's a lot of stuff. It's hard to teach. It's hard to learn. It takes a lot of time. So if you do not have the space and time to budget at least 15 hours a week to working on this content outside of class, you're likely going to have a really hard time. So just keep that in mind, right? Obviously, the decision is up to you at the end of the day. But if you do not have this time this quarter, maybe consider taking this in a future quarter when you have less classes or have the room to fully focus on this one class. So review and build and add on to your notes after class. Already talked about this a bit, but prioritize completing the assignment types that benefit your learning the most after you've tried them all out. Find a study group. That's probably one of the best things you can do for your success in this class. You guys will introduce yourselves to each other and get to talk to each other a bit in lab tomorrow. But as soon as you can, finding people who you can just sit down and study with is going to be great for your learning. You guys can share tips, share memorization techniques, which is also going to be a really important thing for this class. So especially for lab, repetition and creating memorization techniques are super important. We're going to be learning almost 150 to 160 bones in the body. We're going to be talking about a lot of the 200 plus muscles in the body, and then specifics of how they interact with each other, what fuels them, the cellular biology that drives it, etc. So there was a lot of info in this course. And so any kind of shortcut you can find to help memorize something in order to recall that later is going to be helpful. And on that point, it is not the expectation that you leave this course having memorized every single thing that you're going to come across in here, right? I know you're going to have to cram some of this stuff. I know that a lot of this is being put in short-term memory to pass an exam, and then it's going to be gone afterwards. That's okay. Like that's everyone's expectation with this course, because it's just not possible to learn all of this unless this is the only thing you're doing. However, a big part of this course is developing the practice of how to examine information critically and then how to produce that information critically, right? Which is something that's going to be really common, especially in the medical field, which a lot of you are in this course in order to go into, right? You need to be able to be very specific with what you're looking for and very specific with how you are reporting that information in order to make sure you are taking care of your patient, or that whoever's taking care of that patient has the info they need. Okay? So just wanted to clarify that expectation, right? You're going to be asked to memorize a lot in these modules, but it is not necessarily the expectation that you leave this course having all of that in long-term memory. Hopefully that makes sense. Does anyone have any questions or things that I can clarify? Okay. Great. Some additional tips, if you haven't already set up your Seattle Central email, please do that as soon as possible. You can just go onto the Seattle Central website and then the little search bar, search email, and you should be able to find the instructions for how to do that. But if you don't have this email set up, you're going to easily miss notifications and updates and things that like announcements that I send out on Canvas, updates to due dates, whatnot. All of your Canvas notifications go directly to the SEC email unless you've changed your settings. Speaking of settings, go into your Canvas account and look at the settings, specifically the notifications, right? So you can set up which things you want to be notified about and which things you don't. I remember from the student side and even from an instructor side, I get emails from Canvas that I don't care about and I just immediately delete as soon as they pop up. And so changing your settings so that you're only receiving emails that actually matter to you is going to be helpful in organizing all of that and not just immediately deleting something that actually might have pertained to you. So check out your Canvas account settings, go into your profile and set up your notifications so that you're getting the info you need. And then lastly, of course, check your Canvas regularly for those announcements and updates, etc. And so beyond that, anytime you need help, please contact me. Again, the earlier the better. If something's going on in your life that is going to impact your ability to complete an assignment or attend class someday, let me know again as soon as possible. I think I'm a very empathetic and caring instructor, and I want to help you anytime that I can. So yeah, I guess the more heads up you give me, the more likely I'm going to be able to accommodate it. So just contact me whenever you can to talk about this stuff. Don't just disappear for a week and then come back the next week and you're like, I don't know what to do. I've fallen behind. Like, email me as soon as you know you're going to be gone for a week, and I can help you at least get pieces, or we can come up with a plan for how you can catch up later rather than trying to work backwards. All right. Beyond that, we have Seattle Central Student Services. They have their website with a bunch of stuff on there. There's free tutoring for biology courses on the first floor of the SAM building. We have our Student Counseling Center, which, to be honest, from what I've heard from student experiences, hasn't been very helpful for them. But that doesn't mean they won't have something that might help your particular experience. So do give it a shot if you need any kind of counseling services. And then lastly, the Accessibility Resource Center. So if at any point in the past, or if you believe you would need it now, if you have gotten extended class time or the ability to take an exam in the testing center with an assistant, or if you need a translator, anything like that, any accessibility resource, the ARC is what takes care of that. I can't set that up for you. So if you email me letting me know that you need some accommodation, I can't reach out to ARC for you. You have to go to them. But they're on the first floor of the BE building. Their email is on the campus, is on the Seattle Central website. So please reach out if you have in the past or think that you would need some accessibility accommodations. And to expand on that, I think most students see the Accessibility Resource Center for very specific, like debilitating disabilities. That isn't necessarily true. There are lots of disabilities that aren't easily visible or may not even be considered a disability. For instance, I have ADD. I was not diagnosed with that until I was in grad school, and so didn't know about it, or didn't know what condition was causing these symptoms until that late. But I certainly would have benefited from things like extended test time or having the ability to take an exam alone somewhere rather than in a large classroom with a lot of distraction. And so things like that can get you accommodations as well. Really, anything that is going to impact your ability to learn or perform, you may be able to get an accommodation for. So consider checking that out if you think you'd need it. And so that is all for our syllabus overview. Do you guys have any questions from anything in here? Okay. And so something else of note that isn't talked about very often, I guess in our class, we do have a literal syllabus contract in that syllabus quiz, but the syllabi on their own are contracts, right? By staying in the course, by enrolling in the course and staying through add drop week, you have essentially agreed to all of the policies, procedures, and the outline of the course that were outlined in that syllabus. And with any contract that you're ever going to sign in your life, you should read that critically and in detail to make sure you know what you are getting into. So please do read through the syllabus on your own at least once when you have the time, because you are agreeing to those things. Okay, so from here, let's take a walk through Canvas really quick so I can show you where the information can be found and what some of the assignments look like. So can I just get a quick thumbs up or emoji that you guys are seeing the Canvas site now? Cool. All right. Thank you, James. Thank you, Benjamin. Okay. So when you first log into Canvas, you'll be on your dashboard with all of the Canvas sites for each of your courses. So I am teaching this quarter our section of A&P and then 2 sections of nutrition. Once you click into it, you're taken to the home page. This is great for basic information for this week, right? Our meeting schedules, the exam dates. But this page is likely to change at least a few times, if not every week, as we move forward, with like a brief look at the schedule for that week and assignments that are due, etc. But most of what you will need, or everything that you will need for this course, should be accessible through modules. So please go to the modules tab whenever you're looking for something. Don't just rely on this to-do list that shows up on the homepage, just coming up. Right? Students easily, or this to-do and the coming up, students easily miss stuff by heavily relying on this. This to-do list is not always 100% accurate. So please make sure you're also checking the modules page to see what stuff is due. So anyways, in modules, all of our information is separated into individual modules. So we have that same general info up here with our syllabus and the course schedule. This will stay at the top of our modules page, so you have access to that whenever you need it. Our Zoom link for lecture and our Zoom link for office hours. And then getting started, this first unit is going to be modules 1 through 4. So module 1 is mainly this like overview, introduction to the course information. And then you have some, should be relatively quick assignments. This introductions video might be a little bit longer. But this is essentially the contract that I was talking about, where you are agreeing to the policies of the syllabus. We have a quick little reflection and technology check-in, and a reflection on learning, where I'm asking you to read a short article just talking about some of the best practices for learning. And then this introductions video assignment. So this video assignment is kind of giving you a trial run of what a lot of the peer review lab assignments are going to be like. So I'm asking you to upload a video of yourself in this discussion board. Right, so you'll take a video of yourself where you're going to share your preferred name, your preferred pronouns, place of origin, like where you're from, whether that's a state in the US or a completely different country or whatever. If you have a beloved pet or hobby or really anything that you'd be willing to share quickly about yourself. And then lastly, you're going to choose a TikTok or YouTube video to share as well. This can be related to something you care about. This can just be something you found funny or interesting. Just literally just pick a video that you will share with the class that connects to you in some way, and then describe that in your self-recorded video. Okay? So essentially you're uploading two things, your self-recorded video and that extra YouTube or TikTok video. You can just put a link there, you could embed the video itself. But yeah, so once you've done that, that's due this Sunday. All of the assignments in this course are due on Sundays of that week. So you'll turn this in on Sunday. Once the due date has passed, Canvas will automatically assign you 2 students to peer review. In this case, the peer review, I'm just asking you to go in and comment on it. Like, so just watch their selfie video, watch the YouTube or TikTok video they shared, and then comment something that shows that you watched it and that you're excited to be in class with this person. Okay? And you just need to do that for 2 people. So you get 10 points for doing the actual first assignment part, uploading your videos, and you get 5 points for each of the peer reviews that you complete. And so that's going to be the same general structure for almost all of our lab assignments. So a lot of what our lab assignments are going to look like is creating a model out of Play-Doh or out of crepe paper when we get to mussels. You will then take a selfie video of yourself, identifying the structures on that model. You'll upload that to a discussion, and then you will be assigned 2 peer reviews for that following week. So that's how the lab assignments are going to generally be structured. So you can also access those in the discussions tab itself. But again, I recommend you come through modules for anything that you need because you have all of the resources that apply to those assignments. Okay, so that's module 1. And then module 2 is our first actual course content. So we are going to get started on chemistry today for just a little bit, again, just to make sure that we cover it all by the end of class on Thursday. But so in our regular modules, you'll have the learning outcomes for that content, the PowerPoint that I use in class. You'll get the links to the recorded lectures. So the lecture we're having today that I'm recording, that link is also going to be posted in here. And then any additional resources that I think might be helpful. You have your assignments for that week. Basically every module lecture assignments are going to have at least 1 quiz, your coloring book pages, and your games and puzzles. And then at the bottom are your lab resources and assignments. Right? And yes, Benjamin.
Yeah, you said that we were gonna use Play-Doh for the lab assignments and upload a video of that. And I was wondering, does that mean we have Play-Doh at home or what?
Yeah, so as I mentioned kind of like early on in the PowerPoint, you are welcome to have your own Play-Doh if you want to have your own, but you will have class time and you can use Play-Doh that I have in lab to do those assignments. Yeah,
So that means film the video in lab?
In lab, yeah. So essentially it's going to be a room full of you guys all creating your models and doing videos at the same time. Yeah. So any kind of like anxiety or nervousness about taking a selfie video and having that uploaded, I promise that goes away really fast. Like everyone's doing it. But yes, you do it in class. So thank you for asking that because that's a good point of clarification. So for both the Play-Doh and the crepe models, I will give you time in class to create your model and record your video. You'll just have to do your peer reviews at home. That's it. Okay. So the quizzes, again, you get unlimited attempts. So take them as many times as you'd like to get the full points. This is what the coloring book pages assignments look like. So I have the instructions for those at the top. Please combine all the pages that you do for each assignment into one document and save that document as coloring book module 2 in this case, right? The same name as the assignment itself, coloring book module 2, before you upload it. Okay? But you can include as many or as few of these as you like. I am just showing you which pages correlate with the content we're going over that week. Okay? So we're going to go over the vertebrae briefly next week, but those are included in here too to kind of break up the assignments. And then anatomical planes and positions, that's all stuff that we will be doing this week as well. Okay. So you have 5 potential pages that you can complete for a maximum of 15 points for this assignment. If you just turn in 2 of them, you will still earn 6 points, and that does not negatively affect your grade. And then the games and puzzles is a similar setup. Right? So for module 2, we have 1 game and 2 possible puzzles. The puzzles are really quick and easy. Usually it's literally a jigsaw puzzle like this, but it's just to get you to spend more time looking at this content and thinking about it. And then some of the games are a bit more involved. So this one, you're going to want to know what these terms mean before starting it, because you're matching the term with the definition, but you just complete it. For games, you need at least an 80% completion to get credit for it. And then for puzzles and word searches, they must be 100% complete in order to get that credit. So do keep that in mind. And then similarly, please combine your screenshots of your completed page into one single document that you upload here. So you will upload games module 2 for this assignment. If you upload 3 different images of each of these games, I'm only going to look at the first one. Not because I'm lazy, it's just there is a lot of stuff to grade in this course, a lot of things to keep track of, and yeah, I don't think it's necessarily asking a lot to have you guys put it into one thing. So please help me out with that. Is there anything else to talk about here? Again, lab content is at the bottom. I'm always going to publish a lab info to know for that week. So this week in lab, again, mainly just on anatomical positions and orientations. So just learn what anatomical position is and these key terms. The list this is the only one that's short like that. I can show you a longer one. So like next week, when we get into the axial skeleton, that lab info is a bit more involved. So each of the bones and bony markings of the skull. So a bit more there. And then some of the axial skeleton, which is the rest of the vertebral column and your ribs. All right. So that's basically what Canvas looks like and how to get around. Okay? Again, please use modules to access anything that you need. You have your inbox. You can go in to message me. If you talk to someone in class and you want to reach out to them again, you can go to people and get their email here. By clicking on them, I also can see how much activity you've spent on this in the Canvas and when the last time you accessed it was. So that's helpful for me for attendance and stuff, or seeing where you're at. Trying to remember if there's anything else I wanted to talk about here. I think that's it as far as Canvas. Do you guys have any questions about how to get around our Canvas site or anything that you've seen so far that seemed confusing or unclear? All right. So that being said, so we've already been talking for almost an hour. I do want to try to throw breaks in here. An hour and 20 minutes and an hour and 50 minutes is a long time to spend on any one thing. So I'm going to give us a 7-minute break, and we'll come back and spend about 15 minutes getting started on chemistry content. So feel free to turn off your camera and mute your mic, and just make sure you're back here at 3:05, where we will get started on some chemistry. So I'll see you then. All right. So like I said, for these last 15 minutes here, we are going to get started on some of the actual lecture content. So these first few modules, or these first couple modules, are hopefully just review. Right? This PowerPoint is going through all of the basic chemistry that you would have learned in a Bio 1 class. And then module 3 is going into all of the basic biology info that you hopefully would have learned in a Bio 1 class. So I am going to move through this stuff quite quickly because I am assuming it's review. However, of course, please raise your hand if you have questions or if something that I said doesn't make sense with what you learned before, so that we can try to make sure everyone's on the same page. So in this PowerPoint, we'll be going over general structure of the atom, different chemical bonds, covalent, different types of covalent bonds, hydrogen bonding, and ionic bonds, how molecules are formed, some of the specifics of water, pH and buffers, and then we'll go into the macronutrients, so carbs, lipids, and proteins, and finishing talking with nucleic acids and ATP. So general structure of the atom. So atoms are what make up all of the things that take space in this universe. So anything that is considered matter. So matter is the term to describe, again, anything that takes up space. We live in a three-dimensional universe, so all that exists is matter, which takes up space, and then space itself. And so the mass of any piece of matter is the measurement of the amount of matter that that object contains. So the most common unit of mass that we use on a day-to-day basis is like pounds or ounces at the grocery store, and grams, any unit of measurement that is relating to essentially weight or how much matter is in that object. That is its mass. Okay. And so all matter is going to be composed of elements, and an individual unit of an element is an atom. So atoms interact with other atoms to make molecules, molecules interact with other molecules to make organelles and to make cells, and so on and so forth. Right? And so we have described and named each individual element. So these are different versions of these atoms, because each element has its own specific properties, coming from how many protons and electrons and neutrons that are typically found in one atom of that element. So again, an atom is a single unit of any one element. So that brings us to the periodic table of elements, which is describing all of the elements that we have observed and given a name to. So only 92 of this long list naturally occur, and then we also have elements that we have created in a lab, essentially. Right? We won't be talking about all of these or nearly all of these in this class. We're going to be focusing on the ones that relate to living organisms, right? And apply to biology. And so mainly, we're going to be focusing on carbon, nitrogen, and oxygen, as well as hydrogen. Sorry, so those main four. But of course, we have lots of micronutrients or ions that play a big role in our cellular processes, like sodium and chlorine, phosphorus, potassium, etc. So you're not going to be looking at this a lot, but there is some important info on the periodic table of elements. So here we have shown all of the individual elements separated with their atomic number. So this atomic number is showing you how many protons are in that element. So hydrogen is any atom with 1 proton. Helium is any atom that you would see with 2 protons. Right? And that's really all those names mean, or what those names are signifying. It's the number of protons in that element. So although an oxygen may most often have an atomic mass of 16, meaning it has 8 protons and 8 neutrons, that is not always the case. You can have an oxygen with 10 neutrons, and that is still an oxygen as long as it has 8 protons in its nucleus. That is all that name really means. And again, an atom is a single unit of any one of these. So one oxygen is one atom of an oxygen. And those atoms will interact to form larger molecules like H2O. So water is 2 hydrogen atoms bonded with 1 oxygen atom. And so, again, as I pointed out previously, mainly we're going to be talking about oxygen, carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, and then some of our other important ions that play a role in a lot of our biological processes, like calcium, potassium, chlorine, and sodium. But you are not going to be asked to recognize every single atom or every single element on that table. Another important point of note is being able to understand chemical notation, right? So typically I'm going to be showing molecules or atoms with their atomic symbol, so H or O to refer to hydrogen or oxygen. Any number that comes before that atomic symbol is referring to how many individual atoms of that element there are. So 2H is referring to two separate atoms of hydrogen. However, if that number is a subscript, like what you see down here, so H with the subscript 2, that is also showing two atoms of hydrogen, but these two atoms of hydrogen are bonded into a single molecule. So when there is a subscript, those atoms are bonded, those elements are bonded to each other. If it is before the element, they are separate atoms. Right? So again, H2O has two atoms of hydrogen and one atom of oxygen, but they are bonded together into one molecule. So that's why you see H with the subscript 2. Okay. So within each atom, we have three subatomic particles, three different types of matter that make up that atom. So in the very center of the atom is our nucleus, which contains neutrons and protons. And then we have electrons that surround that nucleus on what we call the cloud or shells. So the electron cloud or the electron shells that surround that nucleus. And these electrons that are on these electron clouds are what are going to be used to create bonds. So atoms interact with other atoms through sharing or exchanging these electrons. And specifically, the electrons that are on the outermost shell. And so we'll come back to that in a second. So more about these subatomic particles, right? So again, we have protons, neutrons, and electrons, and they all have specific properties with them. Let's just go ahead and skip to that page. So the protons and neutrons, which are found in the nucleus, are the only atomic particles that carry mass. So let me close my email. I don't know if you're getting those sounds. The protons and neutrons in the nucleus carry mass. So if there are two protons and one neutron, that is a mass of 3 for that element. The electrons, which exist outside the nucleus on the electron cloud, do not carry mass, or do not carry a significant mass. Electrons are kind of weird in that they're like considered matter, but we don't have a mass unit for them or a mass measurement for them. Right? It's more of energy that we know exists in certain amounts on these clouds. So it's a bit weird, but they do not contribute to the mass of that element, but they do carry a charge. So mainly what is going to be causing interactions between individual elements is going to be from the charge that these particles carry. So protons carry a positive charge and electrons carry a negative charge. And so together, these interactions, or the number of protons, the number of electrons, will determine the charge of that element. Okay? And that's going to play a big role in how they interact. Right? Throughout chemistry, the rule of opposites attract is generally true. So if you have a positively charged element near a negatively charged element or molecule, that is going to cause some magnetic attraction between them, cause a slight bond. Yeah, basically looked at that. Right. And so we can gain all the information we need to understand the structure of each element from the periodic table. So every element on the periodic table has 4 key pieces of information. So we have the chemical symbol and element name. So oxygen has the chemical symbol O. We have the atomic number and the atomic mass as well. And that is what we are going to use in order to figure out how many protons, electrons, and neutrons exist in one atom of this element. Okay. So no matter what, an oxygen is always going to have 8 protons. If you're looking at an element that has 9 protons, that is no longer an oxygen. Okay. That is the defining factor for what makes this an oxygen, is that it has 8 protons. So that atomic number is always telling you how many protons that element has. Typically, that is also going to apply to the number of electrons that element has. So each element exists in its most common state, or most commonly in a neutral state. So where it has a net charge of 0. And that means that if we have 8 protons carrying positive charges, we have 8 positive charges in one atom of oxygen, it will also most likely have 8 electrons, so 8 negative charges to give it a net charge of 0. Okay, so they cancel each other out. And so most often you can assume that that is going to be true if we are analyzing with the periodic table. And lastly, we have our atomic mass number. And as I mentioned on the last slide, only the protons and neutrons contribute to the mass of an element. And so if we know the number of protons from our atomic number, and we know that we have an atomic mass of 16, you can just subtract the atomic number from the atomic mass to figure out how many neutrons are there. Okay. So with just this information, you should be able to figure out exactly how many protons, electrons, and neutrons are exist in a stable, neutral atom of this element. And so we're going to give this some practice here, and this will probably be the last thing we do today. But I'm going to have you guys practice with iodine here. So take a minute. You have all that info. You have our atomic number, our atomic mass, the atomic symbol, and the element name. I want you to determine the total number of protons, total number of neutrons, and total number of electrons that exist in one atom of iodine. And you can round this up to 127. You don't have to keep track of 0.904. So let's call the mass 127. So take a minute to do this, and then I'll have you guys share. I see a lot of people have stopped writing, so we'll go ahead and jump into this. So would anyone be willing to share how many protons are in one atom of iodine and how they figured that out?
You said protons, right?
Yes, protons, please.
Well, I would just look at the top left-hand corner and 53, as it wouldn't be iodine if it was anything different, I believe.
Awesome. Absolutely correct, right? So in the top left corner, we have our atomic number, which tells us exactly how many protons are in this element. And as James pointed out, if this had any other number up here, that would no longer be an iodine, because that is what determines what element we're looking at. So iodine has 53 protons. Awesome. Now the next easiest piece of information would be to jump to electrons. So would anyone be willing to share how many electrons iodine has and how you figure that out?
I will try. You said that in the most common form it was neutral, so that would mean they'd have to cancel each other out, so 53 electrons as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So Benjamin said that they would have to cancel each other out, right? But I said that most commonly these elements exist in a neutral state where there's a net charge of 0. So could anyone expand on what Benjamin means by protons and electrons would need to cancel each other out?
You talked earlier about protons having a charge of +1, where the electrons have a charge of -1. So they just need to have I guess 53 of each, and then you come to 0.
Awesome. Yes. Thank you, James. So each proton is going to be carrying a positive charge of 1. Each electron is going to be carrying a negative charge of 1. And so if we are assuming iodine is in a neutral state with a net charge of 0, we need the same number of protons as electrons, or vice versa, the same number of electrons as we have protons. So they will cancel each other out. Awesome. And so now, would anyone other than James or Benjamin, they have both helped us out here, could anyone share with us how many neutrons iodine has and how you calculated that? We're at class time, so someone speak up.
I believe that we take the atomic mass, which is 126.9, and in this case, I think we can just use 127 and then subtract 53 because that's the amount of protons, and that'll give you the amount of neutrons.
Which is?
Oh gosh, I had it.
It's okay. I won't make you do them. So it's 74. Okay, but
Okay,
yes,
yeah,
thank you
yeah.
for setting that up for us. Okay?
Yeah,
Our atomic mass down at the bottom here, 127. We subtract our number of protons, 53, meaning we have 74 neutrons in this element because only protons and neutrons contribute to mass. Okay. So I'm sorry this class went 1 minute over. I hate holding on to you guys. If you have any questions or concerns that you would like to discuss with me, please feel free to stick around and ask them. Other than that, I have office hours tomorrow morning from 9:30 to 11:30. And I will see you in lab tomorrow afternoon at 2 o'clock in SAM 306 in this building. So thank you guys for coming today, and I'll see you tomorrow.